My name is Zara Miller, 33 years old, currently living and working in a small lakeside town in Vermont. If someone saw me now, a self-made woman who built her own company specializing in sustainable handmade products, living a stable and peaceful life, they might assume I grew up in a family filled with love and fairness. But the truth couldn't be more different. I was born into a middle-class family in the suburbs of Albany, New York. My father was a civil engineer, a principled and quiet man, while my mother was an elementary school teacher, gentle but somewhat biased in her parenting. My family always emphasized the value of hard work, saving money, and treating everyone kindly. But those teachings, when applied to me and my sister, seemed to have two completely different meanings. My sister, Amber Miller, 35 years old, was 2 years older than me, and for as long as I can remember, I lived in her shadow. Amber had an attractive appearance, always dressed fashionably, and could capture everyone's attention the moment she entered a room. I still remember when we were little, whenever Amber reached out her small hand, adults would praise her grace, but when I tried to show anything, I only received encouragement like, "Good job, sweetie, but you should learn more from your sister." Since childhood, Amber adored anything shiny, designer dresses, expensive toys, and the admiring glances of friends. As for me, I was content with books, afternoons spent making crafts in my room and saving up small change from babysitting or helping neighbors with yard work. My mother loved both of us dearly, but she tended to go easier on Amber. Whenever Amber asked for something, my mother would quickly give in, while with me, she would explain the value of patience and the importance of independence. My father rarely got involved in parenting, spending most of his time on work and bridge blueprints spread across his desk. Perhaps because she was indulged, Amber grew up believing she deserved all good things without having to try very hard. She switched colleges twice and eventually dropped out, always justifying it by saying, "Those boring degrees just don't match my vision." After that, Amber went through all kinds of jobs, from store assistant to event coordinator, but never lasted more than a few months before finding a reason to leave. Meanwhile, I quietly worked, saving every penny from my first jobs at a nearby coffee shop. I earned a full scholarship to a small college in Vermont, and after graduation, I started my own company, a workshop producing handmade goods from recycled materials. It began in a small corner of an old garage I rented, and I worked tirelessly for years. Every bit of profit was reinvested into the workshop, and I still drove the used car I bought from an acquaintance. My simplicity always made Amber scoff. "Oh, Zara, why live like this? You make money to enjoy it, not to hoard it in a bank account." At family gatherings, Amber was always the star. She would show off the latest handbags, the trip to Hawaii that her boyfriend paid for, or the new car she proudly flaunted as if it were a major achievement. I, despite quietly succeeding with my company, was still seen as the quiet little sister, nothing remarkable. Amber always knew how to make herself the center of attention at our family's stage. Once, at Christmas dinner, when relatives asked about my work, Amber cut in, "Oh, Zara just sells some cute handmade stuff online. But she's really talented, she's so crafty." Her tone was both praising and diminishing me in front of everyone. In moments like that, I simply smiled and swallowed my frustration. To my parents, Amber was always a bit impulsive but full of heart. As for me, I was always reminded to give in to her, to set an example, to be more generous. And I did that for so many years, until one day, I realized that this generosity only deepened the wounds inside me. From a very young age, my relationship with Amber was shaped by comparisons I never wanted. I remember clearly when I was 7, making a volcano model for my elementary school science fair. I spent a whole week learning how to create fake lava, carefully mixing colors and shaping each bit of rock. The night before it was due, I stayed up almost until midnight, repainting the mountain base to make it perfect. The next morning, as my mother drove us to school, Amber excitedly boasted to Mom and me, "I helped Zara with the lava part. Without me, she couldn't have done it." I still remember the look in Mom's eyes. pride shining as she glanced at Amber in the rearview mirror, while I sat frozen, unable to speak. Mom believed her instantly, and I could only stay silent, swallowing the lump in my throat. That wasn't the only time. In 4th grade, our school held an art contest on the theme of nature. I spent so many afternoons after school sitting alone in the backyard, observing flowers and sketching. When my painting was chosen for display in the school hall, Amber made the rounds telling friends. I suggested that color scheme to Zara. She listens to me, so she got picked. Again, I stood behind the spotlight that should have been mine. I once tried to share my feelings with Mom about how I just wanted to stand on my own, to be recognized for my efforts. But she would always gently pat my head and say, "Don't be so sensitive. Your sister loves you and only wants to help. It's okay to let her have a little credit." At first, I tried to understand, but as I got older, I felt more and more trapped in a role that wasn't mine. Amber became more skilled at turning my achievements into part of her contribution. In middle school, I won first prize in a district writing contest. My story was about a summer camping trip, the campfire nights, and the sound of insects in the dark. At the awards ceremony, I overheard Amber whispering to some relatives, "Zara's talented, but I gave her the main idea when she was stuck. She couldn't have written it without me." I heard every word, but once again, I chose silence. Each time Amber claimed my hard work in front of others, I felt like she was stealing a piece of me. And I felt lonelier than ever. I started avoiding conversations with her, shrinking back at family gatherings. But no matter what I did, Amber always found a way to put herself at the center, while I was pushed to the edges of the story. I remember one time at Grandma's birthday party, when everyone gathered around the table, Amber suddenly said loudly, "You know, when Zara was little, she was so afraid of the dark. Every night she called me to sleep in her room." Everyone burst out laughing while my face burned with embarrassment, feeling exposed in front of our relatives. When I quietly pulled Mom aside, hoping for comfort, she just shook her head and said, "Don't take it to heart. She's just joking to lighten the mood." Gradually, I learned to hide my sadness deep inside. I focused on school, on my own goals, just hoping that one day I could escape the comparisons and the pitying looks people unknowingly gave me whenever Amber spoke up. But those years shaped who I became. Resilient, calm, but carrying a scar that's hard to erase. After graduating from college with a degree in green economics from a small school in Vermont, I returned to my hometown of Albany to begin building my own dream. I rented a tiny room behind an old auto repair shop, with rent just low enough that I had a little left over to buy materials. In the early days, my recycled craft workshop was nothing more than a small corner in an abandoned garage, with a few old wooden tables and a rickety fan clattering through the night. I worked from morning until late at night, my hands covered in sawdust and paint, and in the evenings, I barely had time for a quick meal of instant noodles or a slice of bread with peanut butter. While friends posted pictures of trips and graduation parties, I quietly counted every last cent after paying for electricity, water, and supplies. Some months, I even had to sell my old laptop just to make payroll for the first employee I hired to help with packaging. In contrast to my simplicity, Amber entered adulthood with a completely opposite lifestyle. She rented a luxury apartment in the city center, where rent consumed more than half of her income. Amber's car was always the latest model, replaced every year even though her previous loan hadn't been paid off. Her social media was filled with check-ins at fancy restaurants and parties with people I knew were merely acquaintances. Amber's jobs changed constantly. One day, she was an assistant creative director for a fashion brand. Another, she switched to event planning, and a few months later, she was in real estate. Every time she left, she had some grand explanation. That company wasn't on my level, or I need a better environment to showcase my talents. But in reality, Amber simply lacked the patience or resilience for any job. While Amber flaunted appearances, I poured everything into developing my products. The tables, chairs, and bookshelves made from recycled wood gradually won customers over for their durability and elegant designs. I learned about marketing and knocked on the doors of small shops and craft fairs to promote my work. Some months I barely earned enough to cover expenses, but I remained patient, believing my hard work would eventually pay off. When I was 28, after nearly 5 years of perseverance, my workshop started gaining attention. A young entrepreneur's magazine ran a story about my startup, a modest woman with a small production space, but a spirit stronger than any leader they had ever met. They called me the one who breathes soul into recycled goods. The article was widely shared, and within months, orders poured in so fast that I had to hire more staff and expand the workshop. Amber reacted to the media coverage in a way I had partly anticipated. She shared the article on her personal page with a caption, "So proud of my little sister. No one knows how many nights I stayed up with her discussing strategy." Reading those words, I could only quietly smile. In reality, those sleepless nights spent with ledgers, plans, and worries found Amber busy at cocktail parties somewhere. After that, at every family gathering, Amber never missed a chance to mention me in a way that left me both sad and embarrassed. You know, Zara only expanded the workshop after I kept encouraging her. She was so timid at first. Or, I told her to try selling online back then and look at her now. Even when I tried to avoid or change the subject, Amber always seized the opportunity to link her name to my achievement. In moments like those, the relatives' eyes looked at me with admiration, but also seemed to silently think, so Amber was the one who helped make Zara successful. My parents would gently remind me, as long as you're successful, don't worry about what people say. But perhaps they didn't understand that it was precisely those comments that made me feel like I would always be a shadow next to Amber's bragging, even though I knew exactly who had shed sweat and tears for every small success. At that point, I thought I had gotten used to the way Amber always appeared, as if she were the source of my success. But I had no idea that just a few years later, Amber would use those very words and displays to push me into the worst situation of my life. A situation I could no longer avoid. When I was 32, my workshop had reached the scale I had dreamed of, over 20 employees, orders from major furniture stores in and out of state, and a loyal online customer base. I thought everything was finally on track, and I could breathe a little easier when disaster struck. Fast and relentless like an unannounced winter storm. My main supplier, a large recycled wood workshop in Pennsylvania that I had worked with for 7 years, suddenly declared bankruptcy. I lost my primary material source, orders were delayed, customers began pressing for compensation or canceling. At the same time, the major e-commerce platform I relied on unexpectedly changed its display algorithm, making my store nearly invisible in search results. In less than 2 months, I was forced to take out a temporary loan from the local bank to keep operations running, pay my employees, and scramble to find a new supplier. Night after night, I sat silently in my small office, the light casting shadows over loan documents, new contracts, and financial statements. Exhausted, but I still believed this was just a challenge I had to overcome. It wouldn't have been worth mentioning if Amber hadn't accidentally, or intentionally, come across the loan papers and contingency plans my lawyer had prepared. One afternoon, when Amber stopped by the workshop, supposedly to drop off some homemade pastries, I invited her into the office while I was in the middle of organizing documents. I stepped out to take a partner call for about 10 minutes. When I came back in, Amber's gaze had changed, sharper, filled with scrutiny. That day, I didn't think much of it. I offered her tea and saw her off, my mind consumed by numbers and rescue plans. But 3 weeks later, at my mother's 60th birthday gathering, Amber turned those documents into the perfect tool for a performance no one saw coming. The party was held in my parents' backyard, glowing with lights and the colors of small flags strung across. As I stepped out of my car, I saw Amber beaming, wrapping an arm around me like we shared nothing but sisterly love. She leaned in and whispered, "Don't stress. I'll help you in a bit." The words made me pause, but before I could ask anything, Amber had already glided into the crowd. When everyone was seated around the table, Amber stood up, holding a glass of wine, her eyes glistening as if she might cry. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate Mom today," she began in a voice full of emotion, drawing every gaze toward her. But besides celebrating Mom's birthday, I think our family needs to know a truth. Something very painful that I don't think can be hidden any longer. The table fell completely silent. I saw my mother's worried eyes on me and my father's brow furrow. Amber looked straight at me, her eyes filled with fake pity. "Zara, her workshop has gone bankrupt," Amber choked out. "I know this because I accidentally saw her paperwork when I stopped by. She's too afraid to say it, but I can't just stand by and watch my sister suffer in silence." Whispers rose around the table. I sat frozen, my heart pounding. My mother covered her mouth, and an aunt exclaimed, "Oh, the poor girl." Amber continued, her voice breaking as if she were sacrificing her own honor to speak a painful truth. "She lost her supplier, lost big contracts. The bank is reviewing her personal assets. She's scared to face everyone, but this is family. We have to help her." She glanced around the table, receiving sympathetic nods. Then Amber turned to me, her voice sweet as honey. "Sis, I've already talked to Mom. If you need to, just move in with me. I have an extra room. We'll get through this together, okay?" I felt so choked up I couldn't speak. I knew everyone was looking at me, waiting for confirmation or a denial, but in that moment, I saw one thing clearly. Amber didn't just want to belittle me. She was using this opportunity to make herself the hero in front of the whole family. A feeling flared inside me, one I'd suppressed for so many years. It was time to act. But I also knew one denial at this dinner wouldn't be enough. I needed a way for the truth to speak for itself, so Amber could no longer hide behind her polished words. And that idea quietly took root in my mind the moment I saw the fleeting, victorious smile on Amber's lips. The whisper spread quickly around the table like waves. Relatives, people I once thought would understand and believe me, turned their concerned, pitying, and even curious eyes toward me. Meanwhile, Amber stood there with her hand lightly resting on my mother's shoulder, her face as if bearing a pain too heavy to endure. "Zara, don't worry," an aunt on my mother's side said gently, though her tone couldn't hide the condescension. "I know a bakery near my house. They're looking for a morning helper. It's stable and easy work." An uncle on my father's side chuckled and patted my shoulder. "Or think about doing accounting at my office? The pay isn't great, but what more do you need right now? Start over. Don't be ashamed." I gripped the chair tightly, steadying my voice as I replied, "Thank you, everyone. Actually, things aren't exactly like Amber just said." Amber immediately interrupted, her tone sweet with a hint of reproach. "Zara, don't pressure yourself. No one in the family blames you. We just want to help." I bit my lip, swallowing the rebuttal that caught in my throat. I knew that anything I said now would seem like an excuse, like I was trying to save face. To them, Amber was both the caring sister and the brave one who spoke the truth I supposedly wanted to hide. The rest of the dinner felt like a strange stage play. My mother kept putting food on my plate, whispering, "Eat, don't think too much, everything will be okay." My father sat in silence, sighing now and then, his disappointed gaze flicking over me. Relatives whispered advice, suggestions, sometimes casting those pitying, curious looks. Amber played her part perfectly. She moved from table to table, telling relatives how I was exhausted from work, that she warned me to be careful, but I wouldn't listen, that she was ready to take me in to ease my financial burden. Each word felt like a knife, slicing my pride. When the party ended, I quietly helped my mother clear the table, my heart heavy but my gaze steady again. I knew that responding now would only make me look weaker. I needed a plan, a way for the truth to surface without a single word of defense from me. That night, after everyone had left, I sat alone on the back porch. Fall had begun, and the breeze was cool, carrying the scent of grass and the wood of the old trees. I opened my phone, rereading every text, contract, and email from my lawyer from the bank. Everything was clear. My workshop was in trouble, yes, but it had never gone bankrupt. and every solution I was implementing was reasonable and transparent. A thought sparked in my mind. If Amber could turn an incomplete piece of information into a dramatic tale before the family, I could use the truth to show everyone her real face, not with arguments, but with undeniable proof. I messaged my lawyer. Can you send me an official statement on the company's legal status tomorrow? I need it clear and detailed. Just seconds later, he replied, Sure, I'll email it first thing in the morning. I leaned against the wooden door, looking up at the night sky. The stars sparkled, and the peace felt strange after a day of turmoil. I told myself, Zara, don't rush. The truth needs to come out at the right time, in the right way. The next morning, when Amber called inviting me to breakfast, saying she wanted to discuss how to help me through this hardship, I politely declined. I had more important things to do. In my heart, the plan was clearer than ever. I would show Amber that putting others down to lift yourself up only forces you to bow your head and face the truth. I hung up, opened my laptop, and began gathering what I needed for the meeting I knew would completely change the course of this game. A week after the family gathering, I received a call from a real estate broker I had once worked with while searching for workshop expansion space. His voice was full of excitement. Zara, I just got insider info. The Cedar Lakefront villa you asked about for your parents 3 years ago is back on the market. The price has dropped sharply because the owners are divorcing. Do you want to see it? I froze for a few seconds. The Cedar Lakefront villa? The very house Amber had talked about endlessly to the family for years, calling it the dream house. She once took me to see it when it was first listed, painting visions of backyard barbecues and breakfast on the porch, watching the sunrise over the lake. But like all of Amber's grand dreams, it stopped at words, because she never had the financial means to make them real. I closed my eyes, seeing Amber's face clearly from the family gathering, the triumphant look as she stood before everyone, those sweet but cutting words. That thought pushed me to the answer. I want to see the house. Today. Just a few hours later, I stood before the villa, the 2-story wooden house with a large balcony facing the vast Cedar Lake, the moss-green roof touched by time, the wide porch welcoming the lake's breeze. The peace was striking, so unlike the city's noise, where Amber always chased after showy things. The broker looked at me questioningly. The current price is $980,000. The owner wants to sell fast, so they're open to negotiation. I took a deep breath. It was a big, risky investment while my workshop was still recovering. But then I thought of the truth I held, of my years of effort, and of my resolve not to let Amber tarnish me with empty words any longer. I nodded. I'll buy it. Please keep my identity private in the deal. I'll pay with personal funds, nothing tied to the company. 3 days later, all the paperwork was complete. In my hand was the set of keys to the villa Amber had always dreamed of. And I knew this wasn't just a profitable investment deal. It was a symbol of the new boundaries I was about to draw. I texted Amber. Amber, are you free Sunday at noon? I want to meet privately. There's something important we need to discuss. Immediately, she replied, her tone as sweet as when she stood before the family that day. Of course, dear. I'm always here to support you. On Sunday morning, I drove to the villa. The autumn sky was crystal clear, the roadside maples starting to change color, reflecting down onto the lake's shimmering surface like a mirror. I opened the door and stepped into the house that was now mine, flinging open the windows to let the lake breeze sweep out the lingering musty scent. I brewed 2 cups of coffee and set them on the table out on the balcony. At exactly 11 a.m., Amber's luxury car turned onto the stone-paved drive. She stepped out in a bright-colored dress that stood out, her wavy hair styled as if for a fancy party. When her eyes met mine on the porch, then swept over the scene around us, I saw the look of surprise flash across her face. Amber walked closer, her heels tapping lightly on the wooden deck. Zara, what are you doing here? Whose house is this? Don't tell me you're cleaning for the owners or something. I invited her to sit, gesturing toward the steaming cup of coffee. Have a seat. I made you coffee. Let's talk. Amber laughed, but her voice betrayed her confusion. You're really something. I don't get what's going on. Why did you bring me here? I looked her straight in the eye, for the first time in years without avoiding it. I bought this house, Amber. It's mine. In that moment, Amber's face went rigid, her expression turning as still as stone. She took a small step back, her eyes darting around as if searching for a reasonable explanation. You're joking, right? How could you have bought it? You thought I went bankrupt. I finished for her, my smile calm but my gaze firm. No, Amber. I never went bankrupt. And today I asked you here to talk about the truth. Amber stood there, her eyes wide as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. She forced a smile, but it was a thin mask barely covering the panic shining through. Zara, you really bought it? You're joking with me, right? How could you... I thought you went bankrupt. I gently pulled out a chair beside the wooden table on the porch and sat down, my eyes steady with the calm I had prepared for days. Oh, Amber, I never went bankrupt. I had difficulties, yes, but not bankruptcy, and you knew that. Or at least, you could have asked me instead of creating an entire story in front of the family. Amber slumped into the chair across from me, her hands gripping her purse strap, her head lowered to avoid my gaze. For the first time in a long while, I saw her without her usual confident, proud posture. I poured the coffee, my voice gentle but firm. I've been silent too long, and that silence created space for falsehoods to thrive. Today, I invited you here not to blame you, but so we could talk as two adults. Amber looked up, her eyes red, her voice unsteady. Zara? I'm sorry. I don't know why I did it. When I saw those papers, I thought this was finally my chance to outshine you. All these years, I've felt like I was always behind you. Even if no one said it out loud, I knew they looked at you with the pride I never got. Amber's confession left me silent. The lake breeze carried the smell of damp grass, softening the moment. I spoke slowly. Amber, my success was never about comparing myself to you. I just wanted to live my life, build it with my own hands and passion. I never saw you as competition. You turned it into a race I was never in. Tears began to fall down Amber's cheeks, this time no longer the fake ones from the family gathering, but real tears. I'm so tired, Zara. Tired of pretending I'm okay. I'm successful. Tired of chasing appearances just so I wouldn't be compared to you. I was afraid of being called a failure, afraid the family would see me as less than you. I listened in silence, without blame, without satisfaction. Just a small sense of relief stirring in my heart that finally, after all these years, Amber had said what I'd been waiting for. You don't have to do that anymore, I said softly. I don't want a sister I have to compete with. I want a real sister, a sister who respects me, is honest with me, and helps me nurture this family bond. And I promise to do the same for you. Amber looked at me, her tear-blurred eyes no longer avoiding mine. Can you give me a chance? I know I've done awful things, but I don't want to keep living like this. I nodded, my heart lighter, as if a weight had lifted. Of course, but we need some ground rules. From now on, no more false stories, no tearing each other down to lift ourselves up. If you're struggling, tell me, and if I'm struggling, I promise I won't hide it from you. Amber let out a long breath, as if she had just released a burden she'd kept hidden for so long. I promise. And thank you for not cutting me off. I rose to my feet and offered my hand. Amber took it. The first time in so long that it wasn't just for show, but genuine. So what now? She asked, half laughing, half crying. Now, finish your coffee, then I'll show you around the house you always called your dream home. I didn't buy it to take away your dream. I bought it so we'd have a place that truly belongs to our family. Amber nodded, and there she was. Not the polished mask, but a woman yearning for love and understanding. And in that moment, I believed we truly could start again. 2 weeks after that conversation on the lakeside porch, Amber and I sent invitations to the whole extended family for a special gathering at the Cedar Lakefront Villa. The invitation was simple. We hope the family will join us at Zara's new home, a time to reunite and share what is most sincere. That day, the autumn sky was a brilliant blue. Gentle sunlight streamed through the golden maple leaves, reflecting off the glassy, still lake. The lake house was filled for the first time with the sounds of relatives and friends' laughter. My mother, stepping onto the porch, stared wide-eyed, her hand trembling as she touched the railing. "Zara, you really did it. The house I always thought was just a dream." My father, always a man of few words, simply nodded slowly, but his gaze was full of pride and emotion. The relatives gathered, some admiring the architecture, others curious about what might come next at this gathering. When everyone had settled around the outdoor table, Amber suddenly stood, her hand slightly shaking but her voice ringing out with determination. "Thank you all for coming today. First, I'd like to say something I should have said long ago." The space grew so quiet you could hear the leaves rustling underfoot. Amber looked around at each familiar face, then rested her gaze on me. "At the last family gathering," she began, her voice choked, "I said things that weren't true about Zara. I misinterpreted what I saw, and instead of asking her directly, I turned it into a story that led everyone to misunderstand. I'm sorry." Whispers filled the air. My mother placed a hand on her chest, astonished. An aunt quietly murmured, "What is going on?" Amber continued, her voice now steadier. "Zara never went bankrupt. She only faced a temporary challenge, and through her own determination, not only did she overcome it, she made the dream come true that I once wished for myself. This house. I'm ashamed of what I did. And today, in front of the whole family, I want to make it clear, Zara didn't need anyone to rescue her. She was strong enough to rescue herself." No one said a word for a few long seconds that felt like minutes. Then my mother stood, walked over, and hugged Amber tightly, her voice trembling. "Thank you for having the courage to face this and say it." I closed the distance between us and said, my voice soft, "Let's hope from today, all misunderstandings can end. This house isn't about winning or losing. It's a place for our family to truly come together." At that, my father finally spoke, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm proud of both of you. Your mother and I want nothing more than to see you truly love each other." The mood of the gathering lightened, turning into laughter and warm conversations. Relatives came up to congratulate me, many apologizing for believing rumors too quickly without checking the facts. That day, the lakeside villa wasn't just my new property. It became a symbol of a new chapter for our family. We shared dinner outdoors, the children's laughter echoing across the wide yard, the aroma of grilled food mingling with the cool breeze off the lake. As night fell, string lights twinkled across the yard like stars. I sat on the porch looking out at the lake, Amber beside me. No longer the sister who had exhausted me with rivalry, but someone truly trying to start over. "Zara," she said softly, "thank you for giving me this chance, and I promise, from now on, I won't let jealousy guide me anymore." I smiled, more at peace than ever. "I believe you. This is just the beginning, Amber." From that day, the lakeside home became the place where, at every special occasion, our extended family gathered again. Dad's and Mom's birthdays, Christmas, Thanksgiving, they all took place here. A place free of comparisons, filled only with sharing, love, and kindness. Amber and I started a completely new journey, one I had never dared to imagine before. A true partnership between sisters. Amber was the first to reach out. One afternoon, as I was sitting on the porch adjusting a new product design, she called, her voice a little hesitant but sincere. "Zara, can you help me review my finances? I don't know where to start. I've let it all get out of hand." I closed my laptop, smiling softly into the phone. "Of course, Amber. Come over. We'll start together." That evening, Amber arrived with a pile of papers, bills, credit agreements. She sat quietly, watching as I sorted them into stacks: overdue credit cards, installment loans, living expenses beyond her means. Sometimes I caught a flicker of embarrassment in her eyes, but this time, there was no avoiding, no excuses. We created a budget together. I helped her call creditors to negotiate better repayment terms. I guided Amber on setting up an emergency savings fund, on tracking every small expense. And, most importantly, I didn't judge, didn't criticize. I just listened and offered solutions. Amber began learning to live more simply. She sold off impulsive luxury purchases, moved to a smaller but cozy and affordable apartment. I saw her slowly change in small ways, cooking for herself instead of constant takeout, planning shopping trips instead of spending on a whim. As for me, the workshop stabilized and grew stronger than ever. That crisis turned out to be the chance to improve my supply chain, connect with more reliable vendors, and expand our sales channels. I no longer felt pressure to prove anything to Amber or anyone else. I focused on the true value I wanted to create. One spring evening, as we sat on the porch looking out at the moonlit lake, Amber said quietly, "Zara, if that day you had chosen revenge, if you had used this house just to hurt me, we wouldn't be sitting here like this now." I was silent for a moment, then replied, "I didn't want revenge, Amber. I just wanted us both to be ourselves. No more hiding, no more competition, just real sisters." Amber smiled, lighter than in all those times she used to wear her glamorous mask. "I know. And because of that, I learned something I never understood all those years. Success isn't about making others smaller. It's about growing together." The Cedar Lake house became a true family home. Thanksgiving, Christmas, my parents' birthdays, or just a simple weekend, the whole family gathered here. Meals filled with laughter, afternoons spent fishing by the lake, nights around the porch fire. These replaced the old gatherings, filled with comparisons and rivalry. Amber was no longer the sister obsessed with others' views. She became a companion, someone who could sit with me for hours just discussing planting more trees by the porch or repainting the fence. And I no longer felt I had to hide my fears or pretend to be strong in front of her. That journey wasn't easy. It took time, effort, and moments of facing ourselves. But if anyone asked me if it was worth it, I would smile and say, absolutely. Because true success in the end is when we choose to take each other's hand and move forward together. Looking back on the journey, I understand that the greatest success of my life wasn't the value of the workshop or the lakeside house, but that Amber and I truly rediscovered the bond of sisterhood after years of misunderstanding and rivalry. We learned to talk, to share, and to overcome challenges together instead of competing. The lakeside house is no longer just a property, but a symbol of unity and love. I believe the power of sincerity and compassion always surpasses any act of revenge or petty comparison. What do you think about my story with Amber? Have you ever experienced something similar in your family? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow the channel for more meaningful stories about family and life.